All right, so let's just cut any fat out of this completely. Modern philosophy isn't much of any good, to be honest, and it's turned into this new. The new philosophy is essentially just a regurgitation of old philosophy, just being thrown up onto a paper 9 times out of 10. I mean, so okay, so like I have the Republic right next to me right now, right? And in the Republic, there's a lot of quotes, right? Direct quotes from other writers, which is fine, right? So like random page 80, and then again, to make the wisest of men say that nothing in his opinion is more glorious than, and then it's the quote, when the tables are full of bread and meat, and the cupbearer carries round wine, which he draws from the bowl and pours into cups, right? That's the Odyssey. Plato, Socrates, whatever, they used to quote writers, right? Just stories. And they quoted these stories with a purpose, right? He uses that to further his argument. New philosophers like to do this thing where they quote other philosophers, right? So like, what's your opinion on death? Well, Marcus Aurelius said that we stare at death every day. A real man is one who stares back, or something like that, right? No, that's not your opinion. That's you just throwing up what another man said and saying, well, I also agree with this. Like you're a dad watching like TV, and you're like that's what I meant. That's my opinion on politics, and you just point to the TV and say what the newscaster said. That's not your actual opinion, and it's like and even with the simple larger topics of philosophy, right? So what is your goal in life? Where do your morals come from, right? You could say something like nihilism. You could say, well, I'm Christian. You could say I'm a theist. You could say many things on what you base your life philosophy off of, right? And then, so where are those new life philosophies, right? Okay, well, my new life philosophy, a new life philosophy is optimistic nihilism, right? So this like vague idea that mainly came from like YouTube and TikTok, right? And that's what you're basing your life off of. Nice. Also, it's not even a new thing at all. It is just, again, regurgitating nihilism, which was created arguably, 300 years ago, 18th century, 19th century, whatever, 300 years ago, and all you can come up with in those 300 years is to steal somebody else's idea and their philosophy on life and repackage it like they do with logos now and say that this is my philosophy on life. Like, no, I know what the real issue is. It comes back to like the real issue on everything else. This like everybody, like literally anytime anybody talks about any topic, right, that's like not going well, it's the system, and it sucks because it is at the end of the day, right? Nietzsche, right? He wrote his first book when he was 28, right? Socrates dedicated his whole life to philosophy. Plato did the same. Plato dedicated his whole life to philosophy, and then the one man that he looked up to was put in jail for having his own opinion. Like it's just been proven time and time again that if you have your own opinion, you will either be silenced or, as Socrates was, go to jail, right? And not even like that, just that as an issue, right? But nobody in their right, you were able to live your life until you were 28 at some point, right? Clearly that's what Nietzsche did, right? Until he found himself and he wrote that book. But now it's like the second you turn 18, the clock's ticking, man. And so people can't sit down and dedicate their life to philosophy like they used to be able to anymore. And are these new philosophers even philosophers then? Because a doctor, right? A really good doctor dedicates his life to the craft. A really good basketball player dedicates his life to basketball. So when you take that away from somebody, which first of all is low-key evil, but it sucks because like with inflation, you have no other choice. And I'm not saying that it's anybody's fault, but it sucks. So now you have these philosophers who, no matter how much they love the craft, no matter how much they love sitting down and writing these beautiful orchestras that they put on paper, sitting and taking their whole life just for their magnum opus, like the Mona Lisa took 20 years to be created. Like, we can't do that anymore, and it sucks. And does that mean that philosophy is over? Does that mean that there will never be any new philosophy that isn't just a regurgitation of old philosophy? And if so, that sucks. That is such a terrible thing, because every old philosopher describes philosophy as life. Without philosophy, what is life? When you go into things like the allegory of the cave, right? Where it's like the whole point is that you are blind without philosophy. You are nothing without philosophy. And we can't genuinely sit in that. We can't genuinely feel that. We can't write about that because we're too worried about everything else that we have to go through in our modern day. We're too worried about work. We're too worried about school that we can't sit down and just think. The allegory of the cave just shows how important philosophy was to Plato. At least it was that important to one man. It's that important to me. It's so important because, without philosophy, we have nothing. At the end of the day, right? I think, therefore I am, right? When Descartes said that, right? So all we have is our brain. At the end of the day, the only thing that we can prove is that we are thinking. And our thoughts on that world for that reason are everything. And it's so shitty, pardon my French, it is so shitty that now we can't dedicate our lives to the one thing that is provably real, which is our brain, our thought process. And what do we do when we can't even do that? But I don't want this to end and just be some nihilistic rant, because that's not what it is. I think more people need to stop thinking what somebody else said and instead really think about what is their life philosophy. What do they have to say, not what somebody else said. Because it is truly sad that we are at the point in life where everybody is so insecure that they can't even say their own opinions, and instead they have to quote somebody else who they think said it better, or who they just want to agree with because that's the popular person. No, there's more to it than that. Philosophy is about truly being yourself. It's about your genuine opinion, not what sounds nice, not what sounds PC, your real opinion. Free speech is amazing for a reason, that it is there for a reason. So I'm hoping that somebody will come out and just truly speak out of their mouth with words that are genuinely them and nobody else. Because it's a disservice to all of these people who spent years on their philosophy and giving their opinion that you read to not further that beautiful thing that they created with your own thoughts, your own words. I don't know. Look here, yeah, but